Welcome to Fringe Element here on the 440 Sports Network. Football is here, and my name is Braden Gall. You can follow me on Twitter at Braden Gall.
Mine's Erin Dugan. You can follow me on Twitter at the Erin Dugan or Instagram, Erin_Dugan.
We have a fun show planned for you guys today. Tony Barnhart, Mr. College Football, is going to join us. Going to have some historical context for this particular SEC season. Going to talk Brian Kelly, Billy Napier with him. We're going to talk Urban Meyer, actually about Urban Meyer with him.
Wow.
Yeah, exactly. We're going to talk about the 9-game conference schedule. With that news sort of broke, so we'll discuss that a little bit later on as well. We have Nick De La Torre from On3 covering the Florida Gators. He just literally toured the facilities and has been at practice. The Gators just had their second scrimmage. So what's going on with the Florida Gators and what does the new facility look like? So we'll dive into all of that a little bit later on. So 2 guests today on the show. And Erin Dugan, we get to talk about an SEC football game that is going to take place on an actual football field this weekend. I cannot wait. I'm so excited.
It's this weird like push-pull of how is it already here / it feels like it's been forever since we had an actual football game to talk about.
I don't feel the how is it already here thing yet. Maybe I will like in 2 weekends when I have to work a whole lot. But this weekend, I'm excited about just kicking back late on a Saturday night and watching a little SEC after dark out on the West Coast, out in the islands. I can't wait. It's going to be a ton of fun. And of course, we'll debate the CBS theme song because there was huge news in the Big Ten with their television contract with CBS, which of course is no longer going to be where the SEC will be played.
Some people are totally mad, bro.
I listen, I understand that's a great theme song. It's a great theme song. So we'll figure out what to do with that here coming up in just a second. So we've got Nick De La Torre covering the Florida Gators a little bit later on. We got Tony Barnhart, Mr. College Football. We got to preview a football game, talk 9-game conference schedule. But I want to start with I don't know if this is an interesting question, an odd question, a totally out of left field, wrong, incorrect question. I don't know.
I'll be happy to tell you.
But I know you're the person to ask. And I don't know why I've been feeling this way over the last couple of weeks.
Oh, God. Where's this going?
But I feel like Georgia's underrated.
Oh, that could have gone in so many different directions.
I know.
I'm relieved.
It had nothing to do with my digestive tract. Everything to do with the Georgia Bulldogs. I feel like they're sort of underrated. Yes, I know they're number 3 in the polls and they're picked by everyone to win the East. And I'll ask Tony this question a little bit later on too. But like, I feel kind of like Georgia's not getting enough credit right now, and I don't know why I feel this way.
What are you basing that on? You're obviously not basing that on their win-loss, like their win-loss, so it couldn't be that. I mean, you're talking about like media hype and chirp around them? Are you talking about what criteria are you basing that on? You're not hearing enough?
I think maybe that's what it is. So they're the defending national champs with arguably the best roster in all of college football, with starting quarterback returning, which is part of the equation because even Georgia fans don't all love Stetson Bennett, which is stupid to me, but whatever. Mm-hmm. I agree. It can't be like their national ranking because they're number 3 in the polls. I would have them 2, but I guess that doesn't really count as underrated. Yes, they're going to be picked to go 12-0 I'm with you, but I just don't think that they are being talked about enough. And in the same way that any other normal defending national champion who returns their coach, their quarterback, and one of the best offensive lines in America and one of the best rosters in America. Like, there's no reason really for Georgia to take a huge step back. Yes, I know 15 players got drafted, but they're just, I don't know. Like, I don't think they're getting run, and I think they deserve more run. I think they can win the national championship, and they're not getting run. I don't know.
Are you picking up on a vibe? I think you're like tapping into collective football consciousness right now.
It's the zeitgeist that I'm upset with, Erin. That's what it is.
Mm-hmm. Because it's really not, there's really nothing on paper. You just named everything on paper that Georgia has absolutely not been we could not count them as underrated for. But I think that you feel an overall underrated vibe towards Georgia.
I think people are just assuming they're going to take a big step back and that Bama is the clear-cut, easy front runner and that Ohio State's clearly number 2. And I'm like, no. Georgia is going to play Alabama in the SEC title game, and they're probably going to play in the national championship game, and I wouldn't be surprised if Georgia wins the national championship again, and I don't feel like anyone is saying that out loud.
When did you get back here?
You mean like when did I feel like I felt this? Nobody makes me bleed my own blood. Nobody.
How are you feeling about what you're thinking? What are you thinking about how you're feeling? No, when did you get back to this, like, I don't think you were
week and a half.
screaming Georgia might. I don't think you were thinking Georgia would win the national championship a couple weeks ago, were you?
No, but I think I've always felt that they were on par with Alabama. Like I'm giving Bama the edge, like every other rational human being.
Right.
But I think that there's just this whole like people are just not talking about them. They're just being overlooked. And now that the season is here, they're not a talking point. They're not a thing that we discuss. And I think to not mention them with Alabama on the same sentence plane platform is just stupid. I think it's stupid. It's not a knock on Bama. Like, they're great. I just think it's dumb to be like, Georgia lost everything. They're not going to be as good.
But what an amazing position for Georgia to be in, to be the defending national championship and not and almost get that, like, the benefit that the underdog team had. I mean, they're far from that. Don't get me wrong. But just you know, Alabama, you do anything wrong, you're in the deficit. I mean, Georgia's kind of sitting pretty right now.
It is rat poison at its finest. And Kirby Smart, here's the one person that's totally fine with this. Kirby Smart. Kirby Smart loves this. He's like, totally. Oh, you guys think we're not going to win the national championship? Let me serve that up on a platter to my team. Like, he loves that this is how they're being treated.
Yeah, they're sitting pretty right now.
And it's not even that disrespectful. They're number 3, like, in the whole country, like, by everybody. It's kind of odd, but it's just a vibe that I'm picking up on. And
Big vibe guy.
And I think people better be careful. I think Georgia's gonna whip that ass most of the season. So
I think that's fair.
Okay. All right. So I'm not that crazy.
You're not that crazy. No, I mean, it's interesting that you point that out. I mean, I think you're right. We're hearing a lot less about them, and if I were them, I would not be mad about it.
Yep. Bingo. And again, when you're talking about national championships, we're talking about rarefied air. And what we do on this show is cover the nuances of that rarefied air. And I feel like Georgia's like just nobody's talking about, just skating on through. Like, oh, don't look at us. We're just the defending champs with, a counting bro playing quarterback. Don't worry about it. It's fine. So just wanted to point that out and ask you that question. So, all right. Before we get to Tony Barnhart, we're going to preview the Vanderbilt Hawaii game coming up in a little bit. Week 0. Gotta love that. There's some news on the 9-game conference schedule, so we'll discuss that after we talk with Tony Barnhart. But real quickly, like, what do we CBS, Fox, and NBC, $1 billion to the Big Ten. It's been covered now. The ESPN deal to SEC actually looks like it's a good deal now for ESPN. It's only $300 million per year. But the real most important question is, what do we do with that epically spectacular and amazing CBS theme song, which has already been used by CBS to promote Big Ten games, which looks totally fucking weird. I've also seen some people parody it with the CBS theme song over, like, bad Big Ten plays. Like, oh, here's a punter dropping a football. Here's like, so ESPN's not going to buy it from CBS and play it on ESPN. So what, does it just need to be retired altogether? What do we do with this thing?
I mean, it's a good question. People are pretty heated about it. And before we make a final decision, since we get to pick what happens with the song, most people don't know that. Yep, they actually let Braden and I make the final decision on that. People compared it to breaking up with someone and then giving your new significant other that sweatshirt. People compared it to, like, Peter Burns said when Coca-Cola tries to relaunch his new Coke. It's just like there's all these mean tweets. I mean, they're not really that mean.
It doesn't stick. It doesn't feel like CBS theme song with Big Ten. It doesn't stick.
Well, right? I guess fake it till you make it. Next up, Maryland, USC.
Da 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 da.
Yeah. This is what dreams are made of, folks. There's some funny tweets out there. You should go look at them. But I don't know the answer to this. It definitely feels wrong to me. I mean, we're also super bratty, like, about SEC, and I know everyone else that's not an SEC fan hates that. However, maybe they could just they start their own documentary style series only about SEC greats and games and just use it for that. People are gonna bitch until the cows come home with using it with Big Ten. It's just not gonna go away.
It's gonna like, and I'm even give it good games. Like, don't forget about, like, the joke that everyone makes, like Illinois versus Northwestern. Like, forget about that. Like Wisconsin versus Iowa are 2 ranked teams that are going to probably be playing in that, like, 3:30 time slot Eastern time. And that's the song they're going to use for that. And it just doesn't, like, like a left guard pulling around with a fullback lead blocking on a trap is what they're going to show. Like, and I'm not trying to disrespect tight ends and fullbacks and trap plays here, But like, unless it's Uga trying to slow-mo bite an Auburn Tiger player on the sideline, that ain't the right theme song for you, dude. I don't know.
People are never gonna be cool with this.
I think it needs to be. It's got to be retired. I feel like you got to retire.
But if you're CBS, I'm like, I would want to retire it.
Right.
I wouldn't want to. I'm just saying, if I'm.
Oh, you wouldn't want to retire it.
I would as like it feels wrong as a fan, but as someone in TV, it's so iconic. It's like you don't really want to give it up because you hit that like iconic intro song like 1 in a million times.
And your brain goes right to like Steve Spurrier versus Philip Fulmer, like boom, like that's what my brain does. I know why CBS would want to keep it on that game, but how many Saturdays is it going to resonate? I don't know.
It worked fine with like Army Navy because it's such an iconic game. I mean, still like
that's true.
They used it with that, but during that matchup. But anything else, it looks weird.
And it would sound very strange on ESPN. Like if they sold the song to ESPN to use for CBS and for SEC games, I don't like. You'd have to charge a lot of money first of all, but I don't think like that wouldn't work either. It's not like we just have to. This is the end of a relationship. We just have to acknowledge that this is the end and pull off the Band-Aid and be done with it. And then don't look at her Facebook page, which is like don't go look at, or I guess it's Instagram now.
Block them.
Yeah, don't go look at CBS Big Ten football at 2:30. Like that's like stalking your ex's Instagram page, right?
Yeah.
Just forget that it's a thing that's happening.
Do not drunk text CBS. You can't do it. It's too costly.
I miss your organ. Wait a second.
What?
That came out wrong.
What a turn that took.
I wish I was funny enough to admit that was an actual double entendre, but it wasn't. It's just the first instrument that I thought of that they played.
Instrument Braden thinks of, organ.
Well, when those theme songs are all like symphony like orchestra kind of deals, right? Like
yeah,
it's not a guitar riff. Like
no, it was
the beginning of that song is an organ, and I don't want nothing to do with your organ anymore, CBS. All right.
Well, I hope they don't take it too hard.
But I like that. Real double entendre there. Okay. All right.
I didn't mean to do that.
Enough of that. We're going to preview Vanderbilt, Hawaii. We're going to talk Florida with Nick De La Torre. We're going to talk 9-game conference schedule. So a lot of stuff still coming up. But right now on Fringe Element, when we come back, Tony Barnhart, Mr. College Football, a ton of stuff about college football and the SEC in 2022. That's all coming up next right here on Fringe Element. Mr. College Football, Tony Barnhart, welcome to the show. Good, sir. How are you, friend?
Well, Braden. It's that time of year. Okay, I went out, and I'm still one of the dinosaurs who reads the morning newspaper, and picked it up this morning and felt just the hint of a cool breeze that tells me that football is coming, and that's when football gets here. That's when we know God is in His heaven. So
yes, I am. I'm in Nashville, which you know, and it's been so humid. It has not yet had that one weekend where it smells like football on a Saturday morning. We normally get it right near the end of August, beginning of September. So let's hope it happens here coming up and we get a little heat break here in Nashville. Let's go right into most of the questions today, Tony, will be about the season coming up, teams that you like, some of the state of maybe the healthiest middle class we've seen in the SEC, fans' relationship with coaches, just normal stuff. But I got to start with the 9-game conference schedule. Yep. I know you talk to people. I have spoken to people, even back in the spring meetings. Those that were voting for 8 still saw the value and knew it was going to go to 9. I don't know who you've spoken to, but when do you think this happens? And what do you like about going to 9 games when they add Texas and Oklahoma?
Well, that answers your question. It's going to happen when we know that Texas and Oklahoma are going to be in the league, because you're going to make all these changes at once they get here. Number one, you're going to come up with a different scheduling format. It'll be 3 and 6 rotators or 1 and 7. It'll be one of those two. We know that. Number two, we're going to do away with divisional play. I got asked that question the other day. Those two things will happen once we know that Texas, Oklahoma are coming. I think they're coming not for 23, but for 24.
I think that all sounds about right. Do you think that what is the balance going to be? Because I think Tennessee is a perfect example. Maybe even Texas A&M is a perfect example of trying to find the balance of the new rivalries, the old rivalries, the second tier rivalries. The 3-6 model is the one that I've been a proponent for. For example, Tennessee, Alabama. If you're over a certain age, I'm 40. If you're over 40, you probably think Tennessee and Alabama is extremely important. I grew up on Tennessee, Florida being more important. So how do you think that they try to figure out the balance with all of that?
Well, ultimately, because of what you just said, Braden, is why I think we'll have the 3-6 model. Because let's take my favorite game. My favorite game in the SEC forever is Auburn and Georgia. And if you go to a 1-7 model, obviously Florida would be Georgia's number one rival.
Right.
And that means that Auburn and Georgia would not be played every year, but every other year. I'd rather that not happen. I think there's many, many examples. You just mentioned one, Tennessee, Alabama. Fans don't want to do. They'll have a choice. Would you like to see the Georgia Auburn game go away for a year, or would you rather come up with a model that allows you to continue to play it every year? That's why I think the 3-6, that among other things, our taking care of our TV friends is also one. Why I think we'll end up with a 3-6 model.
Yep, no question about it. All right, let's talk football here. And again, that could happen like any day now. We're recording this on Tuesday afternoon. It could be announced before you're even listening to this. So we shall see. All right. Big picture across the conference. I have never remembered a year where almost every fan base, Auburn doesn't count because they're Auburn, but almost every fan base in the league has some form of excitement and optimism about their program. I cannot remember a healthier collection of coaches and rosters in the middle of this conference ever before. You could have 12 or 13 teams get to a bowl game. Is the SEC better today than it's ever been before?
It is, Rob, and here's why. I do this when I go out and speak to folks. I said, all right, do this exercise. Take Alabama and Georgia and put them off to the side. Put them over here. Okay, they're better than everybody else. We know, and we know why. Okay, because of recruiting. Number two, take Vanderbilt and Missouri and put them over here onto the right. Now, what you've got left are 10 teams in the middle. And I'm telling you, any of those teams, 3 through 10, any of those teams can beat any other of those teams. Those, to me, almost all of those matchups this year are going to be 50-50 games. They're going to be that close. You mentioned the middle class of the SEC. That's the middle class of the SEC, and I think it's going to be more balanced with more good games than we've ever seen.
Do you have a sense? I know the media picked Kentucky and Tennessee, and then obviously A&M is the favorite to finish second, quote unquote, in the West with Arkansas. Those are the four that seem to be the overwhelming favorites to sort of rise to the top of that middle class. Do you agree with that? Do you have a sense of some other teams that you like to maybe be in that situation, or are you good with those four?
Don't sleep on Arkansas. Just don't sleep on Arkansas. I'm trying to tell everybody that. Right now, I've got Texas A&M finished second in the SEC West. I can be talked out of that because I am not sold on Texas A&M. Now, they could do it. They could have a great year. Great. Wish them a lot of luck. But I'm not completely sold on Texas A&M. I think, but you got to look at them. You got to look at Arkansas, what they've done. You've got to look at Tennessee, and I like Kentucky and what they've done there. So those are schools that definitely make up that middle class you were talking about.
So you don't have somebody shocking the world. I mean, the way Auburn tends to do, or LSU or South Carolina. Like, I'm not buying the South Carolina thing. There's stuff to like, but you don't see anybody else kind of shocking the rest of that middle class and rising up to finish, top 15 team in the country?
I really don't. Maybe a team like Tennessee, because they get Kentucky at home. Yeah. They have a proven quarterback who takes really good care of the football. But, to me, you got to prove it. I mean, look, Braden, let's be honest. Alabama and Georgia are a lot better than everybody else. They're going to meet in Atlanta. I think they'll both be undefeated, and I think both of them go to the college football playoff, just like last year.
Yeah, and I think they could play twice this year, just like last year.
They absolutely can do it twice. That's right.
You mentioned Georgia. Like, I feel like Georgia, and this sounds so strange to say for a team that is ranked in the top 4, that is picked by everyone to win the East, and to your point, many people predicting, myself and you included, it sounds like, to go 12-0. They have a national championship returning quarterback. They're defending champs. They've recruited better than everybody else. Like, Everything is lined up.
Mhm.
Does it almost feel like Georgia's a little overlooked this year at all? And obviously Kirby Smart's going to use that to his advantage, but do you think there's actually a case to be made that people are undervaluing Georgia a little bit?
Oh yeah, a buddy of mine who used to work for the Boston Globe is on the co-owner of the website, our website, um, and he's lived in Boston, worked for the Boston Globe forever. He called me the other day and said, "Why isn't there more hype about Georgia?" With everything they got going for them, I said that is the nature, and you know that Kirby Smart is absolutely loving it. He's loving it. He's saying, guys, they think last year was an aberration. They thought we did it with smoke and mirrors. We got lucky. Alabama got hurt. You know, they don't believe in you guys, and he just loves it. And Georgia's a team, you know, because Alabama is coming back and Alabama is going to be really, really good. People said, okay, all right, the world returns back on its axis and Alabama is going to beat everybody. But, you know, I think Georgia's pretty good.
Yeah, I think they're pretty good too. Billy Napier and Brian Kelly, the two big new names at two powerhouse programs that want to compete for national championships, two slightly different states of the roster when they got there,
Yep.
but certainly very different levels of experience for both those guys. So this is kind of a two-part question, but I want you to compare the two guys and tell me which one do you think has the most immediate success, Brian Kelly or Billy Napier, and which one do you think has the more long-term success?
Okay. Most immediate success, it's got to be Brian Kelly and LSU. I think Brian Kelly, look, let's be honest. LSU's problems never had anything to do with players. All right. They got plenty of players. They've always had plenty of players. The question is who's coaching them up and who's the quarterback. And when the quarterback wasn't named Joe Burrow, they simply weren't as good as they were because they weren't as well coached as they were before. Brian Kelly was an inspired hire at LSU. He is the ultimate CEO coach who's won every place he's ever been. He's the all-time leading winner at the University of Notre Dame. That's got to be worth something. And so I think short term, he'll have one of the better athletic rosters he's had. But long term, the Florida Gators are the Florida Gators. They've got so much going for them. One of the great recruiting bases. They're moving into an $85 million office workout training complex, which they've desperately needed. And you've got a relentless recruiter as the head coach, which is something they didn't have before. So I think long term, the Gators should be good. The Gators should be good every year, and they're going to be good sooner rather than later. They just don't have the roster to challenge in the East this year. They'll be okay, but they're not going to win the East, and I'm not sure they're going to finish. I don't think they're going to finish second in the East.
It feels like there's going to be so many recruiting wars in the East with Napier sort of up-leveling Florida a little bit. Shane Beamer is going to be a thorn in the side on the recruiting trail. And then Tennessee with Josh Heupel. Mark Stoops has sort of established his brand of recruiting. Heupel, it seems interesting because Florida's using NIL. Obviously, everyone who's good at this is using NIL. When you can outsource like 60 to 70% of your job to your collective to help, doesn't that allow for athletic directors to hire more creative coaches like a Josh Heupel instead of just the guy who's just like the egomaniac recruiting, like
right.
Weird, those guys that are like Saban that are just like so focused on recruiting.
Right. You don't have to hire a staff full of guys who are limited in the X's and O's, but they recruit like heck. So yeah, maybe you can be a little more discerning on the hires that you make. But I still don't know how the whole NIL thing is going to shake out. There's stuff now that we can't even conceive of that's going to happen in the next 2 to 3 years. And the players know what's going on. The players know that sooner or later there's going to be some kind of structure brought to this thing. So let's make our money now while we can. Rock and roll. So yeah.
It seems interesting that Greg Sankey has been pretty openly, I don't want to say pissed off, but it's pretty pissed off that they spent 2 years working on an expansion format for the playoff, only to have a bunch of people kind of, again, a Washington State president and a Penn State president sort of got this ball rolling, and then they're the ones who voted against it. We've heard the rumors of like an all SEC breakaway, which I don't think anybody wants. I think it's just a threat. We've certainly now seeing a lot of rumors about 16-team playoffs. Why would the SEC do anything but a 12-team playoff with plenty of at-large bids for their league?
The answer is they won't. There's no reason to. That the playoff plan, I mean, think about who worked on that playoff plan. Greg Sankey, Jack Swarbrick, Craig Thompson, and Bob Bowlesby, four of the most highly respected people in the business who were given the duty by the presidents, hey, guys, go out, find us a good playoff formula and get back to us. And they did. And four of the people incredibly respected. And all of a sudden, the folks in the Big Ten and the ACC and the Pac-12, the timing was awful when Texas and Oklahoma announced they were coming in. They, meaning the other three conferences, thought the SEC was getting ready to take over the world. And so they voted against it and created something called the Alliance. By the way, how's that working out for you? It was a great opportunity. I mean, we're going to get there, Braden. We're going to get there, and we're going to have a 12-team playoff, and it's going to work out fine. But we could have had it done a year ago, if not for these commissioners who looked at it through a narrow prism, whatever word you want to use. This could have been done a long time. And the heck of it is we're going to end up in exactly the same way.
Yep. When you look at the TV contract, ESPN signed the deal. You know, CBS Long had the contract, and you were a part of that, and it was the most undervalued property in the history of live television and sports.
No question.
Then ESPN overpays for it, but before they're even going to start playing, could you make the case, and this is not a knock against the SEC in particular, it's more just, could you make the case that by the time they actually start broadcasting ESPN with the SEC at 3:30 in 2024, that it's actually already undervalued in terms of the contract relative to what the Big Ten just got?
Oh, well, yeah. But I think once we get to the point and all the numbers come in and the Texas and Oklahoma numbers come in, I don't think there's going to be that big of a gap. I really don't. And again, I think the SEC feels pretty good about where they are right now. The fact that they didn't have to go all the way out to the West Coast to beef up their television deal the way that the Big Ten did. I think when Commissioner Sankey said, well, we're very happy having 16 teams in contiguous, I love that word, contiguous states. So I think the SEC is very happy where they are.
We are not expanding to Alaska and Hawaii. We are not going to do that.
We're just not going to do it. Absolutely.
I promise. All right. So listen, I don't know if this is a question you can answer, but I've got to ask it because I want to see what you say. What happens in December for the Auburn Tigers? What are we talking about for the Auburn Tigers in December?
Ask me that question 5 games into the season. The first 5 games for Auburn are all at home. 2 that will be a challenge, Penn State and LSU. If Auburn can go 4-1 in those games, then I think that sort of holds the Dogs at bay for a while. And if things don't go well, I expect them to make a change. Wouldn't be a smart change, but whoever accused Auburn of making smart changes.
Well, it wouldn't be Auburn if it was any other way, Tony. That's
and think about it. But here's what's interesting about that, though, Braden, is that last year you could tell the players at Auburn were not completely bought in. I think that was, the way they started out decent, and the way they finished with a total collapse down the stretch. But now I think the players are bought in. They saw how their coach was treated. They didn't like it, and it became a reflection on them, the way he was treated. But having said that, you can do all the motivation stuff you want to do in the world. If you don't have the people to beat other people, it's not. And oh, by the way, you're still playing in the SEC West, and you're still playing LSU and Texas A&M and Ole Miss and Mississippi State and Arkansas. You're still in Alabama. You're still playing all those guys, and I just think it's going to be tough. And by the way, if you're Auburn, you not only do you have to play Alabama, Penn State, and Georgia in addition to the rest of your SEC West. It's brutal. Brutal.
Thoughts and prayers to Brian Harsin for sure. That gives me a question though, because you've been around this a long time, and I feel like there's lots of coaches that are misunderstood outwardly. Will Muschamp famously looked all like he was pissed off at the world, but like when you actually get around Will Muschamp, he's actually one of the most relaxing guys. Who is the coach in your years covering the SEC that you think was more beloved and respected and thought highly of by his players and the people that worked around him, that sort of the common public and the common fan just sort of didn't understand and get that? Does that make sense? Who was?
I think you're talking about Mark Stoops. Okay, you're talking about a guy who started in the conference, he started 0-8, 2-6, 2-6. People wanted him gone. And what do they do? The school rallies behind him. They invest $200 million into football facilities and upgrade the stadium and build a big shiny complex. And people say, well, the guy's not this recruiting guru. All he does is recruit players and develop them. And so his players absolutely love him. They absolutely love him. The other guy I would mention along those same lines, the most misunderstood coach in this conference is Nick Saban. Nick Saban is a funny guy. When you sit down with Nick Saban, here's the thing about him. If you sit down with Nick Saban and you want to talk ball, he will sit there with you all day and talk ball. It's when you bring up, as we in the media are prone to do, we bring up, well, if you were a tree, what kind of tree would you be? And that kind of stuff, that silliness. But the guy loves to talk ball. He loves to talk about ball, and he loves to talk about coaching ball, and he loves to talk about Bill Belichick and how he enjoyed driving him crazy when he worked for him.
Yeah. How do you disguise a zero blitz with 5 defensive backs and 3 down linemen, and that then he'll just spend 30 minutes explaining that to you. So.
Well, I was in his office one time and I was doing a story that basically that he has a prototype for every position player on the field, exactly how big he's supposed to be, what he's going to look like. And I said, is that true? And we were standing next to a whiteboard. He erased it and he went position by position. This guy's got to be 6'2", 250. He's got to run the foot, and he has a prototype for every position on the field. And when you look at his teams play, you go, yep. You don't see any runts out there playing ball.
No, it's the meticulous nature of how he manages his janitors is even pretty impressive. So, Tony, always a pleasure, man. Everybody check out the website. We do appreciate it. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. And football's here, baby. Football is here.
Ready to go.
That was Tony Barnhart, Mr. College Football, of course. Sports Illustrated. Go track him all down there. You got at Mr. CFB on the Twitters. He's great. He's awesome. He's spectacular. Longtime friend there. And yeah, the news this week was that, and we'll get to the Vandy Hawaii preview here in just a second, but the news this week, of course, was that it looks like we're going to have a 9-game conference schedule in the SEC. As Tony alluded to, it could be a 1-7 or a 3-6 rotational format. I think go back and listen to one of our episodes, Erin. We've explained what the 3-6 and the 1-7 do.
Right.
But I think the news is that it's coming, and it's going to be a 9-game conference schedule. I think it's the right decision for TV partners, for season ticket holders, for rivalries, for new rivalries, old rivalries. It's just the right decision. So I'm glad that our better angels or our more greedy capitalistic angels have prevailed.
Well, and just that that there's enough synchronicity within these coach. That word was hard for me to find.
No, I think it was right though. I think it was right.
Synchronicity. Yeah, amongst these coaches and the people that are making the decisions at the highest level, so that we're not hung up on dumb stuff. And because when you get stuck on decisions that no one can agree on, and they don't, they're seemingly small. I mean, 9 games over 8 is not small. It's not small in TV money. It's not small from ticket sales numbers. I mean, all of that. But when coaches can kind of get over the hump of disagreeing and the people in power and get past it, then we get actual improvements to the sport rather than just arguing about the same thing over and over. So it looks like everyone's coming around. It really didn't take that long, and I can't say I'm surprised because there's money involved.
Yeah, it sounds like that they were pseudo split back in the spring meetings, and that more and more, and even go back and listen to our interview with Ralph Russo. We talked to him right after that, and he was like, yeah, even when I talked to the guys who voted for 8, they understand that it's going to go to 9, and they understand the values of 9 and what they're going to gain out of it being at 9 games as well. So it's not like it's some weird, bizarro thing that's happening. It's weird, though, that I heard you say synchronicity, and I immediately pictured Lane Kiffin and Sam Pittman and Mike Leach in those Olympic swimming scuba hats, doing swimming moves in the pool, just doing synchronized things.
Can you imagine
in the pool? Brian Kelly with one of those condoms on his head. I think it would be great.
That actually is a pretty funny thought. I'm not gonna lie.
This is how my brain works.
They could raise a lot of money if they'd be willing to.
Oh my God. SEC West coaches synchronized swimming performance for
Can
money
you
for charity.
Imagine? That's actually genius. I'm not gonna lie. I wonder who he could talk into. I mean, I got Derek Mason to ride a tandem bike once. Anything's possible.
Did you really?
Yeah, he rode it with me on a whole video, 30-minute video piece for.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. And he was like, Erin, I'm the only SEC coach doing this. I was like, well.
Did he give you? So he gave you a bunch of shit for it?
Yeah, but he was a really good sport about it. I mean, it was fun. We rode it all the way to a restaurant here and ate, and
that was for charity, right? Wasn't it?
No,
Or no?
I think it was for the network. I think we did it for SEC Network. So definitely not charity.
Hey,
But we talked about boys and girls. Like he was big boys and girls club, big brothers, big
Yeah.
sisters. So we talked about that, and they used it for some of their stuff. So we'll count it. But no.
hey,
it's not charity.
hey, Mark Stoops, Brian Harson. Hey, Brian Harson, would you like to ride a tandem bike with me down to the Hound and grab some grub and talk about life, and then ride back to the Auburn facility with me? How would that go over?
Probably not well. I just walked into his office and I was like, Coach, I have a plan for this week, and hear me out on this. I'm thinking tandem bike, and I already rented it. And it's like, Dugan, what are you talking about? We got on it. He's like, Nick Saban ain't doing this shit. I was like, that's true. But sorry.
He wasn't wrong.
It was funny though. Anyways, I digress.
I remember the content. It was great content. I think you did a great job.
Thank you.
All right, Nick De La Torre coming up from On 3 covering the Florida Gators. Gators Online. Again, awesome. Took the tour of the facilities. Has been at practice with the scrimmages. So we got a lot of good stuff for you Florida Gators fans coming up. So stay tuned for that. If you want to hear what's going on, what's wrong with the Florida Gators and what's right with the Florida Gators. So we'll do that in just a second. However, we do have football, Vanderbilt and Hawaii. And it sounds strange to say in week 0 on the road against a group of 5 team, but this is one of the more important games of the year for Vanderbilt. They're a 6.5 point favorite. They have to win this game if they are going to hit the over this year, which is 2.5.
Yeah. Got to do it. And even though Vanderbilt hasn't, obviously we didn't see a lot of productivity from Vanderbilt last year, they did return a lot of the, production. I know it's all relative because it was tough. But production-wise, Vanderbilt returns 69% from last year.
Nice.
And yeah, I thought you'd like that stat. I put it in bold. And there are guys that have a lot of experience. The captains were announced. I actually had not too long ago, maybe a week and a half ago or so. A lot of guys that have been in the program for obviously a long time. I will say no linemen, which was interesting, but Elijah McAllister, like a great group of guys that I knew when I was working there. And I do think maybe if there's not the most talent of any, group of captains in the SEC, these guys have a lot of heart, have been through a lot with this program, and are looking to try to at least prove some people wrong going into the season, even if that only means 3 wins. So I think it'll be exciting. And Hawaii is brand new from top to bottom. So if Vanderbilt could pull this off, I don't know how the time change will affect things, but they've been over there for a couple days already. And so hopefully they've had time to get their clocks all evened out.
Yeah, I'm kind of pissed that you're not coming to us live from
So am I.
Oahu, Mauna Loa volcano resort and beach complex or whatever.
Really missed an opportunity there.
I did spend 6 weeks on the Big Island one summer. That was cool.
Did you?
Dedrick Pearson is the running back for Hawaii. Keep an eye on that guy. So again, Saturday night, SEC After Dark. I know we're all going to be watching because football, please God, be back. But here's the deal. Hawaii, to your point about them being brand new, Hawaii is picked dead last in the Western Division of the Mountain West. This isn't even a good Mountain West team. This is a bad Mountain West team. Mike Wright is entering the 2nd season now as the starting quarterback. I know last year was up and down for him, but he is clearly the guy right now. He needs to show progress, use the athletic ability that he's got, make some plays. Again, you're a touchdown favorite against a garbage Mountain West team. You have to win. And get this. This is my favorite part of the whole game so far, Erin.
Okay.
The director of football operations for Hawaii. Here's the quote. Vanderbilt has no idea what they're getting into.
Oh.
And they are, I believe, renovating the stadium currently. So the complex is under renovation. So the capacity is 9,000 seats.
Oh.
It's 9,500 seats.
It's an interesting kind of threat to make then.
It seems very odd to me, especially considering Vanderbilt's road schedule in the conference.
Weird.
Who does he think they play in the SEC?
I don't know.
I'm not suggesting this is how Vanderbilt's going to win because they overcame the hostile 9,000 and change environment, but to suggest that they don't know what it's like to play in the road against hostile fan bases seems awfully dumb considering they play in the SEC. I don't know. Just my thoughts.
That's interesting. I'm like, unless there's like, I'm like, is there an active volcano that could explain it? Otherwise, I'm a little bit confused as well.
The Enfields are. It's like my 5 and 4-year-old daughter. Like, we're playing lava. Floor is lava. Okay.
Oh yeah.
And the end
totally.
zones are lava, and that's why Vanderbilt hasn't scored most of the season.
That could, I mean, that would be understandable. I don't understand that threat at all.
So weird. So weird.
What else do we want to talk about when it comes to these?
Nothing. This is not a good Hawaii team. This is a Vanderbilt team that wants to make progress. This is a must. I hate to say must-win situation because it's not, but like, right. If you want to win
Vanderbilt to hit the over, it is.
You have to win this game. You have to win this game if you're Vanderbilt. Show us the progress, Clark Lee. Show us.
And I do feel like, you have to just cross your fingers sometimes, whether I'm speaking as a neutral third-party media member or as a Vanderbilt fan, it's kind of just like, you just don't know. So you're like, please just kind of surprise us and show us some progress. But what I will say is when these guys have been going into interviews, I can't remember who it was. It might've been Anthony Orji.
Like he'll be the best. He'll be the best player on the field. Anthony Orji. Sure. Not even close.
Yeah. He had like 92 tackles last year. He's very talented. There is some like
very specific number.
Talent. Yeah. And I just read it actually right before we got on. So I remember, but the guys in interviews leading up to this, whether it be in Hawaii or in practice in the past few weeks, they're talking a lot about, we're just focused on how we're going to do it. We're focused on details, which honestly, at least we're not focusing on what they're going to do. They're talking a lot about how they're going to do it. I'm like, at least maybe know the ropes, like the playbook. And now we're able to go back to details and focusing on how you're going to execute what you have planned or what the coaching staff has planned. So hopefully that's not just verbiage and it actually means something.
Well, I like Vanderbilt minus the 6.5 for whatever reason. I think they go out there and they get the job done. They prove it that progress is a thing. Just stay within yourself and play good sound football. And I think you can beat Hawaii. So I like Vanderbilt. And we have an SEC football game we just discussed. How great is that? That's all that matters. All right. Next up on the show, Nick De La Torre from On3's Gators site, Gators Online. I had a great conversation with him. He was super fun. A lot of insight into the defensive front for Florida, the receiving core, the special teams, and of course, he just took a tour of the facility. So he gives us an update on what he saw inside the new Florida Gators $85 million complex. So we'll dive into that a little bit with him as well. Then we'll wrap this bad boy up. So before we let you go. So thanks for hanging out with us. When we come back, Nick De La Torre from Gators Online to talk Florida Gators. Nick, good to have you, man. Football season is almost here. I know you're out there on the practice field and touring the facilities, and we'll get to all of that. But welcome to the show, and thank you for joining us. We appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. You can almost smell it. You got week 0 just a couple hours away, it seems like, and then the rest of the college football world to follow next week.
So I want to get to the depth chart, and I want to get to the defensive line and maybe even special teams, it sounds like, for the Florida Gators. So we'll get to a lot of things today. But I do want to – you were tweeting this all day on Monday. You got the tour of the facilities, the brand new $85 million indoor practice facility that was probably 10 or 15 years overdue. So first of all, what was the highlight? What was your favorite part of the new facility for the Gators? And where do you think they now – can put themselves relative to the other top tier SEC programs in terms of what they're selling to recruits?
I think to me, the efficiency of it all, Florida really would have to get ready across the street at the stadium and then walk over to practice. Now it's, the locker room leads to the weight room, which leads to the practice facility, indoor and outdoor, which leads you back into, they call it the wet room, which has cold tubs, rehabilitation, trainers, just kind of having everything there, I think is probably the highlight for Florida. If you ask the players, it's probably the lockers, which have, all kinds of technology and stuff for them. So I won't be spending much time in those $15,000 lockers. So for me, it was kind of just the efficiency that it'll bring the program.
15,000 per locker, right?
Yeah. That's what they told us. That's what they told us. I wasn't handed a receipt. But that'd be almost, they have 122 guys on the roster. So that'd be close to a $2 million bill if they were 15,000 per locker.
So where is it now relative? And I'm not suggesting that you've toured every facility in the SEC, but Florida fans have been complaining about this, and especially in Gainesville, of all places in the SEC, to not have an indoor practice facility seemed odd. Are they now on par with Georgia? I know Clemson, they recruit against Clemson as well. But if you look at the Bamas and the Georgias and the A&Ms and the Tennessees, the teams that they're going to recruit against, where do they now feel like they stand?
I think you're just on par. And it's kind of like you said, Florida probably should have had this facility 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago. I wonder if this just puts you on par, but now in the NIL era, does it matter that you have this, or is it just, okay, cool, that's nice, but how much am I going to get paid by your collective when I'm playing school there? So when I'm playing football at your school, to me, that's kind of where things are shifting. So I think it's good that Florida has this. It's going to make the quality of life better for the student athletes, and that's certainly part of the equation when you're recruiting. But I don't know that, these bells and whistles are necessarily what's going to draw athletes anymore when you're considering some guys are getting paid 6 figures to play football at schools across the country.
It feels like you almost kind of have to have like a baseline of cool facilities. And then after that, it's going to be way more about where you're getting paid actual dollars instead of slides and cold tubs and everything else. So, all right, let's get to the actual team. And I know they've had a couple of scrimmages. Billy Napier seemed, a little bit more satisfied with the second scrimmage, maybe not from the tackling standpoint, but let's get to sort of the area that I think is the most concerning. And you can tell me if I'm wrong on this, but it feels like interior defensive line, depth on the defensive line, maybe even linebacker as well. It seems like a freshman is taking reps as the third or fourth stringer there. That was the group that gave this team trouble under Dan Mullen. Where is this group now, just 6, 7, 8 months into Billy Napier's tenure?
Where they were 6 months ago. You didn't have much time to get, some new blood in there. I think Florida really actively, Billy Napier and his staff really actively went after a bunch of graduate transfers to kind of bolster the interior defensive line and just struck out there. That's going to happen, especially with a new coaching staff. But I think Florida's really deep on the edges. Their jack position, their edge rusher is what they call the jack linebacker. And then at defensive end, you're 3, 4, 5 deep at those spots on either side. Inside, you've got Gervon Dexter, who I think has, all SEC potential, but just a junior, somebody who really didn't start playing football until his senior year of high school. So a player that's still learning. And next to him, you've got, I think the starter will be Jalen Lee. And then after that, there's just guys who were high 3 stars, 4-star recruits, but that we haven't seen yet. And I don't think Florida has really any concrete answers at interior defensive line. At linebacker, you've got a tackling machine. I mean, Ventrell Miller, if he was born in the 1950s, might be a Hall of Fame NFL linebacker. That's the style of football that he's going to bring. He's going to put his face mask into your chest, and he likes to tackle violently. I don't know how well he's going to do in pass coverage, but against the run, he's a really good run stopping linebacker. But looking at Utah, a team that really runs the ball well, my biggest question for Florida might get answered on September 3rd. Can they stop other teams from running between the tackles? So that to me is Florida's big question. Tackling was a massive issue in 2021. Will that again be an issue? And it's tough probably for every football team because you're not tackling, the way they were when I was even in high school. You're not having 2-a-days and you're not tackling guys to the ground. You're tackling, foam donuts and pretending that that's a person. And then all of a sudden you've got a 200-pound running back coming at you at 20 miles an hour. And that foam donut was a lot easier to tackle and bring down. Yeah,
they don't have the sharp, pointy knees that are like the actual football players have.
Yeah.
That group in particular and the matchups in particular, because it's not just Utah. I mean, Kentucky's wants to be a physical football team. I know that game's in the Swamp week 2. Chris Rodriguez and company, they're going to run the football. They want to be physical. Tennessee in week 4 on the road, of course. So it is 2-2 sort of, I don't want to say best case scenario, but do you walk away with a first-year coach knowing that it's in the middle of a rebuild, knowing that they're trying to reestablish a new culture? Is 2-2 something that the fans would walk away from that? I mean, again, that's maybe an upset in there potentially. And then they grow in the second half of the season. Is that the right way to approach the evolution of the schedule?
No, not if you look at October. October is always really tough for Florida with LSU and Georgia, a trip out to College Station. I think yes. When I look at Florida's schedule, I've said all off season, I think 7-5 and 8-4 would be a great year for Billy Napier in his first year. I don't think Florida is going to beat Utah. I haven't predicted that all summer. I don't think I'm going to come off of that before September. I'm not as sold, I think, on Kentucky and Will Levis as some other people are. I'm definitely not sold on Tennessee. I think Hendon Hooker is a really good quarterback, but I wonder if Tennessee is a 6-6 football team. And I think a lot of people are writing Florida off as that game is in Knoxville. I think
famous last words for all Tennessee fans to say, we're just going to beat Florida.
Yeah, well, but I know how Tennessee's schedule goes. They lose to Florida and they lose to Alabama. Then they get the Kentucky, and Vanderbilt at the end of the year. You win the Liberty Bowl, and now you've reeled off 4 in a row, and you're the preseason or the postseason sweetheart, heading into the next year. So I've seen that Tennessee show before. I think Florida, though, getting back to it, 2-2 would be fine. It's wild. I lived 31 years before Kentucky had ever beaten Florida, and Dan Mullen accomplished that feat twice in the last 4 years. But it's more of a testament to the team that Mark Stoops has put together, and they play to an identity, like you said. They're fast, they're physical, they're going to run the football, and they're going to try to impose their will. How does that start? If Florida starts the season off 0-2, I might need to take some PTO. I don't know if I want to deal with the fan base after an 0-2 start, but I think that's a possibility. I don't know that fans will be happy with a 2-2 start. To answer the crux of your question, maybe it depends on how those games look. Do you get starched by Utah 38-5 or 38-3 to start the year? That's not going to leave a good taste in anyone's mouth. And if you let Kentucky beat you at home 2 straight trips to Gainesville, that's not going to leave any Florida fan happy. So I don't know that Florida fans would be happy with 2-2. And then I think anything other than a 3-1 start, you're starting to look at, more towards that 7-5 finish. Yeah. That I think it might be the floor.
Well, I think the number right now is 7, right, in Vegas for the win total. So I'll get your pick on that. I'll get your pick on that.
They don't build palaces out in the desert.
No, they don't. Wrong. No, they don't. The pyramids are made of solid gold for a reason. So what about the offense? I mean, Anthony Richardson is clearly the guy. I think anybody who watched him last year, the obvious upside is just there. It's painfully obvious. And Napier felt comfortable enough bringing him, to media days and all that stuff. So I don't even think I need to ask about him. My question is, they ran the football extremely well. That was an issue for so many years for Florida. They ran the ball very well last year. So how good is the offensive line this season? And then more importantly, I think, and you tell me if I'm wrong, the weaponry on the outside, just all the different pieces that we are normally accustomed to seeing Florida just churn out one guy after the other. Do they have that same caliber of weapon on the outside?
We'll run through it. Anthony Richardson could be the answer to the question, what if Cam Newton never stole a laptop and didn't have to leave Florida? That's the kind of potential he has, and he is going to be part of that running game. I look at Florida's team, and you've got 4 running backs really with Montrell Johnson, Naquan Wright, Lorenzo Lingard, and the freshman Trevor Etienne. That's a stable of running backs. You have 4 returning starters on the offensive line. One of them wasn't a Gator starter, but a 3-year starter at Louisiana, and Osiris Torrance, who's an AP second-team preseason All-American, hasn't given up a sack in 3 years. And then right tackle Michael Tarquin, who was a new starter. But Florida's strength is going to be the offensive line and a deep stable of running backs, which also includes a 6'4", 240-pound quarterback that can run the football as well. I've said 60-40 run to pass. I think that'll be what Florida is. Because to answer the last part of your question, they don't have those guys outside. Florida has a lot of receivers that are built in the same mold. They're long striders. They are fast, but it takes them a while to get to that top speed. So you can beat somebody over the top, but they don't have a guy like a Kadarius Toney that you're going to throw the ball to on a screen, or that you're going to throw a little drag to just to get him in space and he can make somebody miss. They were able to get somebody that fits that mold, and Ricky Pearsall, but he's been injured. Florida's hopeful that they'll get him back for September 3rd with a bone bruise in his foot, but he's really the only guy in that mold. So the one guy you have that's different than the other 10 receivers on your roster. So I think Florida's offense will be pound the ball, try to control the tempo, And then when you've lulled the defense into bringing 8-9 guys in the box, hit them with a play action pass. I think that's really going to be Florida's equation to trying to win football games this year.
What's funny about this team is it feels like they've always been extremely good in the specialist department, whether that's punt return, kick return, punter, kicker. Of course, the Emmett McPherson just dominating in the NFL last year for the Bengals in the playoffs. What is this a concern? Is this something that Billy Napier is worried about actually right now affecting the win-loss record?
Well, you've got a punter, and Aussie coming back, and Jeremy Crawshaw. So that's my Punters for People 2 shirt somewhere at the house. I don't know where it is, but that's set. At kicker, I think you've got a competition that might go all the way to September 2nd. Adam Mihalek is a redshirt freshman walk-on, and then you have Trace Mack, who is a member of the last recruiting class, and the two of them, I think you'll continue to see a kickoff until kickoff. And obviously, Florida fans want the guy who's on scholarship to win the job. But to me, if you're the head coach of the football team and a walk-on wins the job, okay, that's fine. That's a free kicker for us. But I don't know that one or the other has been significantly better. Mihalek had 2 conversions, converted both of his kicks in the spring game, one from 52, one from 48, and Trace Mack has a huge leg. I've seen him kick from as deep as 60. So it'll be interesting to see. Maybe you have one guy handle kickoffs and one guy's handling field goals, but I don't really have a great answer for who will handle that job yet.
How much is the fan base going to balance recruiting success, which Florida's on a tear right now, and some of that is just Billy Napier, time on the job, the culture, the facilities, the NIL, like sort of all of it packaged together, starting to get up and running a little bit. How much of that will be taken into account when fans evaluate the win-loss record? Let's say it is 7-5 and they lose to Kentucky or Tennessee and Utah and A&M and Georgia. Like there's a lot of tough games. And so like if they're 7-5, fans are not feeling great, but the recruiting class is top 10. How do they balance those two things when they evaluate the season?
Well, I think it's like you said, it's a balance. It's a pendulum. Are you losing to Georgia 40 to nothing? Well, you better jump up another recruiting spot in the offseason for that. So if you have close losses, I think you can sell the fan base. Listen, we inherited a mess, or we inherited a roster that didn't have the talent that we needed. And we'll get it together. Look, these games were close. We lost to Georgia by a score. We went on the road at A&M and lost by 3 points. You can sell that better than getting the break speed off of you all season long, and then a top 10 class in the SEC might still be 4th in the conference. So it's hard to sell top 10 when that should be a goal. Hey, we had a top 10 recruiting class. Well, okay, you're behind A&M, Georgia, Tennessee, Miami, and Alabama. And it's like, okay, it doesn't sound good anymore. So I think it's a pendulum. It's how do the losses look? Are you competitive? Can you point and say, look, I understand 7-5 is not what any fan wanted, but you can see we're headed in the right direction. We're competing, even though I don't have my guys on the roster yet. And look, now I've got the 8th class in the country. I'm going to get my guys in. And it's going to be better.
I want to get your pick on the over-under, but this is a totally random question. I have my own personal feelings towards Urban Meyer. What are the fans? How did the fans at Florida, like, what is their relationship? How do people view Urban Meyer? Like just a regular old Florida fan. Like, do they love the guy? Do they hate the guy? Do they appreciate it? Do they think he's kind of garbage like most of us? Like what's great coach, by the way, great coach.
It's interesting that you bring it up because Florida is going to put Urban Meyer in their ring of honor. That they haven't yet. Obviously, he left and then went somewhere else. And I don't think they're going to put him in as he's not Steve Spurrier. They weren't going to put him in the Ring of Honor as he was coaching Ohio State to national championships. They've kind of brought Urban around to gauge the temperature of the fan base. And I think people have softened. I grew up a Florida fan and I viewed Urban Meyer as a mercenary. Like Florida was going to war, didn't have the guys to win the war. So they hired somebody from the outside and he did it better than any other coach has ever done it at Florida. People were angry with the way he left and the shape of the team, but I think those people have kind of come around. Time has softened that a little bit. But to me, Urban Meyer wasn't a Gator. He wasn't born in Gainesville. He didn't go to Florida. He's not Steve Spurrier. He came here to do a job. He did it really well at Florida and gave Florida fans probably the best 4 years of football they've ever had or may ever have. So to me, the fans that were angry at the way he left, it was like he didn't owe Florida anything. He was collecting checks and doing his job.
Yeah, hiring the mafia to win a war with like a foreign adversary.
Don't be mad when the mafia leaves.
Right, exactly. They're going to start throwing bodies into that Jersey Shore anyway. All right, 7 is the number. Like, I kind of like the over, but the more and more I think about it, the more and more I see the push is probably the bet here. If you got to throw a bunch of money down, what are you doing?
Yeah, if I'm putting my next mortgage payment down on it, or if I'm putting the house on it, I would go over. I think I've got Florida losing to Utah, Georgia, Texas A&M. So that puts me at 3 losses. Florida always seems to lose a game that they shouldn't, whether that's South Carolina last year or Kentucky last year. That would get me to 4, and I think 8-4. It would be the number that I land on.
All right.
And now, if Anthony Richardson gets hurt against Utah, the under. Hammer the under before they take the line off if Anthony Richardson goes down for any extended period of time.
Well, and we have no idea what Florida State will look like by the end of the season. Who knows? Who knows? Nick, thank you so much, man. We really appreciate it. Of course, check out all his great coverage on 3, Gators Online. You got the whole deal. The Twitter account's great as well. You can go tour the facilities with him. It was awesome. So thank you so much for joining us. We do appreciate it, man. Enjoy the season.
Thanks for having me.
Well, that's the show for today. Nick De La Torre, Tony Barnhart, CBS theme song, 9-game conference schedule. Georgia Bulldogs are underrated. Vanderbilt minus the 6.5. Give me the doors on the road. College football is here. Erin, how are you watching the alma mater on Saturday night? Kickoff, I believe, 9:30 Central Time, God's time. How are we watching on Saturday night?
Well, I'm going to be with friends on Saturday. I have to work some in the morning, but I'm going to be with friends that day because my birthday's on Thursday.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. So I think we go to dinner and then go.
At the Erin Dugan. Wish her happy birthday on the Twitters.
Thanks. We'll probably go to dinner and then watch the game, but I don't know where.
Interesting. Are you more of a like?
I get to make all of my
house?
friends watch a Vanderbilt football game because it's my birthday, and so everybody has to do it.
But if y'all are all going to be out hanging out, this is what I love about like games like this. It's like if you're all going to be hanging out Saturday night anyway, why not just put on a college football game? That sounds great. That's a great little like nice little chef's kiss on the evening. You know what I mean?
I think half of my friends will be really excited about that, and then the other half won't care. But they don't get to pick. It's not their birthday.
I can't wait for my whole family to go to sleep, and I can watch Vanderbilt and Hawaii late at night on a Saturday. No pants, glass of whiskey. Sign me up. Can't wait. Let's roll, baby. College football is here. Next week, we'll have an entire actual preview of week number 1 with like real football games to get to. Cannot wait. No more speculation. Special thanks to Nick De La Torre. Special thanks to Tony Barnhart. Of course, everybody give Erin a follow. Where can they follow you?
The Erin Dugan on Twitter and Erin_Dugan on the gram. What about you?
Check out the YouTube page. Of course, you can get to me on Twitter at Braden Gall at 440 Sports. We appreciate you guys hanging out and listening with us. Enjoy week 0, everybody. We will be back next week. Easy for me to say. This has been Fringe Element here on the 440 Sports Network.